Right. I, Nicholas Pardue, hereby reconvene the Board of Education special meeting in open session at, it looks like 5:28. We have a quorum present with all board members in attendance. Please note that this meeting is being both recorded and live streamed for public viewing. I would like to welcome the community members in attendance this evening. As a reminder, governing board meetings are a business meeting of the board held in public, and although public participation is encouraged, it is not the public's meeting. It is a duty of the board president and/or clerk of the board to maintain an orderly, respectful, and peaceful meeting where all perspectives, voices, and opinions are welcome. Please refrain from speaking while another person has the floor. Item D1, the board did not take any formal action in closed session. I call on Eleanor Briggs to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Item D3, approval of the agenda. That calls for a motion.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Special recognition, Dr. Andrews.
Yes, we're going to take a moment tonight and recognize the many folks that helped put together our elementary Special Olympics elementary unified sports track and field event. So I'm going to come down to the floor there, and we're going to call you up and recognize you for a certificate. So we'll do that here. Thank you. Where's our ringleader? Where is
Right
she?
there.
You two come up. So this, I know, trustee, is a little awkward because we're facing the opposite direction, but this is Natalie Boggs and Dustin Punzel, and these two are folks who are keenly aware of the needs of our students, of all of our students, of each of our students in all the different ways. And so actually, this was Natalie. We're on the field, and she's like, I want to recognize all these people. And I said, send me a list. And then she couldn't figure out where to stop the list. So if you made the list, you did something special. So here we go. Are you ready? Do you want to do this?
No. Oh, you got it.
Okay. Okay, Rod Amstutz. There's one for Natalie Boggs. Rachel Carpenter.
Julie Chevalier.
Julie Chevalier. She's not over here. Okay. Lori Coleman. She's a retired employee. That's right. Greg Duty. Greg Duty. Nope. And then Raul Estevez. Where's Raul? Yeah, come on up. You get a certificate too. So some of these folks don't work at the school site. Some of these folks work here at this building, but make it happen. So like Raul takes care of facilities. Jennifer Hanshoe, transportation. Lisa Hessler. Nope. Nope. Okay. Erica Ip. Yep, she's right here. Yay, Erica.
Helene Lehman.
Helene Lehman. Helene? Not here. Anne-Marie Lopez. Kim Matlock. You come on this side too. Sarah Melser. Nope. Ellie Mendoza. No? Okay. How about Miguel Mendoza? Yeah, he's here. Kurt Miller. It's Kurt. Katie Murphy. Oh, and you're wearing your blue, you're the bullpen crew. These, in the blue shirts, they were the ones who were getting all those kiddos lined up in the bullpen to run. So that, I'm like, thank you for wearing those. Okay, Jessica Niebel. Jessica? Thank you, Jessica. Jonna Preston. Is Dr. Jonna here? Nope, she's probably in an IEP meeting. Okay. Dustin Punzel. Monica Rodriguez. Ray Rodriguez. Tony Romero. Trent Sampson. Shane Sands, he's here. I know Shane's here, I saw him. Justin Schaefer. Samantha Tamoyan, she's on leave with a baby. And James Whittington. James Whittington got one. James, make sure the bills are paid. Okay, do you want to bring people together? I see some photos. Let's scooch together. We can balance this out a little bit. Come on over a little bit. Thank you. Thank you. Staff, we know it takes, this is just a representative of the people who were really, really involved in the work. We know many, many of you were part of it that day. And there's dozens and dozens more staff members and students also that make that happen. It's a fabulous day to bring probably over 1,100 participants, right? About 1,100 students from 11 schools, including Learn at Home, that's right, and all of the athletes that came to make it happen and to move kids to and from and keep them fed and keep them safe and have a great day. And also our law enforcement partners were there. Thank you, Murrieta Police Department and the fire departments. They were handing out awards and recognitions. And some of our trustees, some of you made it there too. But you didn't need a cert. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Thank you. Mr. Pardue, thank you very much.
All right, moving on. We're on item D5, which is public comments regarding meeting agenda items. At this time, the governing board welcomes public comments. Individuals wishing to address the board are requested to complete a request to address the Board of Education card located at the entrance to the board and submit it to the executive assistant. In accordance with Board Bylaw 9323, individual speakers shall be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. The board shall take no action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda except as authorized by law. In other words, we will not be able to respond to you. All right, with that being said, first up, I have Emily Brooks, followed by Jeremy Murphy.
Good evening. As I've said before, I'm a local parent. I've got 2 kids in the district. I'm here to speak tonight about the disguised, but there it is again, the forced outing policy that you guys are trying to pass tonight. As we've explained before, there's several problems with this policy. First and foremost, it's mostly unnecessary. A lot of it is duplicative. These are policies that already exist in existing board policies, and so why on earth would we try to recreate them and just create more confusion? I suspect it's because we're just trying to copy paste this from another school district, and so it's not tailored to our own. And I would just urge you all to do a little more homework, do your own work, and don't just plagiarize from other districts. More importantly, the few new portions of this policy, they're not just unnecessary, but they're unclear, they're unduly onerous, and they're likely unlawful. They're unnecessary because, for example, the FERPA, then the notification that only parents can update a student's records, it's already covered by FERPA. Only parents can update the records, so a student couldn't update their own records if they wanted to. It can only be done by parents, so why put that in there? It's unnecessary. It's unclear because what is an unofficial record? Are we talking about if a student wants to change their name on a seating chart, right? On their little name card that goes in front of their desk? Is that an unofficial record? And do teachers have to notify parents every time a kid wants to go by a nickname? I mean, think about the first day of school in a couple months. Every nickname has to be notified to parents, really? Most of you are teachers. It's ridiculous. More importantly, it's unduly onerous. because keeping track of, for example, we're 2,000 students at most of our secondary schools go each day for extracurriculars or co-curriculars, clubs at lunchtime and such, creates a massive burden on the teachers and staff. Just because you crossed out the word staff in the policy, probably to try to avoid a PERB complaint, doesn't mean the work isn't going to fall on the teachers. They're already busy enough with grading every day, completing all of their other mandatory reporting, lesson planning. Why give them one more thing to do when they're already overworked, overburdened, and probably underpaid? More importantly, the policy is likely unlawful because some of the information required to be disclosed is protected by existing laws, both in California and federally. Despite claims made here regularly to the contrary, parents' rights are not absolute, nor do they exist unilaterally on a federal basis. They don't trump state laws that guarantee student privacy in some protected contexts. Notably, the Supremacy Clause, which has been cited here a couple weeks ago, cannot trump California state laws in this context because education policy is a power reserved to the states by the 10th Amendment. That's why most federal education policy is on either an opt-in basis, where they offer a carrot, we adhere to their policies because they give us money in exchange for it, or it's based on civil rights protections. And so simply claiming that it's a supremacy issue is irrelevant here. And just, thank you.
Right. Jeremy Murphy, followed by John Leonard.
I appreciate the time. I'm a dad of 3 daughters in the district. Last meeting, Christine mentioned she didn't know why any parents would really be against this. And I guess I don't really think parents are against it because we already have 90% of it in existing policy. I think as parents, we don't know how you are working on our behalf because you refuse to talk about specifics and how it differs from current policy in front of us parents. You want people to hash out the details behind closed doors, and that I kind of am against that. Although I do get it. I mean, it's easy to push work onto others and say it's not your job. Nick says the details are for other people to figure out. But the last meeting in front of parents, nobody really discussed specifics of this policy and addressed how it fills the gaps in current policy. So, I mean, there were general comments about constitutional rights and how staff on school sites can't be trusted, and even like self-harm scenarios that would be covered under current policy already. Yvonne did mention current policy about student records, but then, Eleanor and Nick kind of rolled their eyes. So it's hard to know if you don't know current policy or if you do, but you just don't want to do the work. So to show you're working on my behalf as a parent and being transparent, it'd be great if you could discuss the details in the open. Like, for instance, the activity participation, right? I'm a parent, 3 daughters. My youngest is in elementary school. She's in a book club that her teacher started. My middle daughter's in middle school band. My oldest is in high school sports and also in video production, right? So it's like 4 to 5 notifications my family gets alone. And then my youngest also participated in the yearbook cover contest for her elementary school. Is that participation in yearbook? My oldest, she interviews students for the video announcements at her school. Are the students she's interviewing participating in that activity? She's also in the youth life club at her school, but she's never been to a meeting. She signed up on the first day because she got a donut for it. So I don't know if that qualifies as participation. I mean, it's not surprising if you know my daughter, but I share this for a couple reasons. First, if you notice that I knew what was kind of going on with my kids, even without the government getting involved, right? Like, we don't need the government to do parents' jobs for them. And second, there are clear questions about what qualifies as participation. And if you notice, none of those activities involve the principal being involved. So I know you crossed out staff in the notification section, but I'd fail to see how staff wouldn't be required to be involved, right? And maybe you do have a solution, and it would be great, but you're not having that conversation out in the open and discussing specifics and policy details. Instead, you want to kind of push it back to a back room. But if it's for parents, shouldn't the details be worked out in front of parents? And Nick does like to repeatedly say that parents should pay attention to how trustees vote because elections are coming, even though it's like a year and a half away. If you refuse to do policy work on behalf of parents in front of parents, this policy vote isn't really about parent notification and parents' rights. It's simply performative. Thanks.
Good evening, board. And I'd like to comment on agenda item F5. Supreme Court precedent is replete with rulings that confirm a parent's right to have all authority over their minor children's affairs. I won't take any additional time reading citations or rulings that have been cited numerous times in this chamber regarding parental notification. Arguments opposed to this policy usually settle on an assumed financial burden or redundancy in existing regulations. To that I say, some things are worth the money or an extra attention or two. Parents knowing what's going on with their children is one such instance. When someone sitting atop a $300 million+ budget tells you they don't have the money or an administrative solution to inform parents what club their child is attending or if there's a serious behavioral change in their child, realize you are speaking to someone who has no substance in which to carry on a meaningful debate or offer a convincing argument. Essentially, their logic is bankrupt. Ideology commands their judgment. Alan Dershowitz, a respected legal scholar, recently stated, quote, "We are living in an era where facts no longer matter," close quote. An era where politically driven ideology and emotionally charged rhetoric supplant common sense and long-established societal norms. Nothing in any society is more normal than parental rights concerning their minor children. We can never relinquish our parental authority. Doing so most assuredly will lead to expensive litigation for the district and an erosion of the family bond that is pivotal for a thriving society. I urge you to adopt Board Policy 5010 without delay. Thank you.
All right. Beth Fournier, followed by Jane Delorier. I'm going to say that wrong again. Delorier.
Hi, my name is Beth Fournier, and I'm here to show my support for the parental notification policy and say thank you to the board for standing up for, with so many other school districts across our nation for student and parental rights. I would also like to take just a moment to pray over you all. Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity for me to stand before our school board today. I ask that you would open the eyes tonight of those in the room who cannot see the truly special bond between parent and child, and who wish to make decisions for our children in secret. I ask that you bless our school board with courage to protect families by giving parents a place in the room. Help them to see the importance you've placed on parents in raising and educating our children. Place a hedge of protection around them, the school board, so that no word spoken against them will cause them concern. Lord, we thank you for our many blessings, and in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Is Jane here? Jane Delorier? Followed by Christina Taylor.
Hi, I'm Jane Delorier, the grandmother of 2 Murrieta Valley students. I also taught secondary school for 20 years, and I was the sponsor of a gay-straight alliance in the early 2000s. The way I see the extracurricular parent notification policy that Mr. Pardue, Ms. Schmidt, and Ms. Briggs are promoting, this is an effort to force gay-straight alliances to disappear from the school district. If gay students in homophobic homes understand that their parents will be notified if they attend a gay-straight alliance, they won't go. Or maybe Mr. Pardue, Ms. Schmidt, and Ms. Briggs would like to go back to the 19th century and push gay people back into the closet. Maybe you pray that all the gay students in our school district will become convicted of their sin and decide not to be gay anymore. Maybe that's the answer. Tonight I want to share some real-life stories about 3 flamboyantly gay students that I had. These were real kids. First, Travis, a senior in my college English class in 2008. Travis was deeply religious. He was a member of his church choir, and he sure seemed gay. But Travis swore he was and was not gay, swore that to his friends, and said God had given him his high voice to sing God's praises. Once out of the home and out of college, Travis married his boyfriend, and they bought a house together, and they lived happily ever after. Next, my little Brian. Brian was a joyful, sweet, innocent little 11-year-old, 6th grader I had in my speech class. I don't know what Brian understood about being gay. but it was clear to all the teachers on his team that Brian was definitely gay. So tell me, if that were your child, what would you tell him? Would you tell him that God got it wrong when he created him? That single line in Deuteronomy mattered so much more than all of Jesus' admonitions to love? Was that 11-year-old boy a conscious sinner, choosing to be gay? Did the devil get to that little boy and overcome the profound, perfect child that God created? I think God made him perfect in the first place. Last, Lloyd. Lloyd was a student in my American Lit class in 2005. Lloyd had so many close friends who loved him like crazy. He was super active in the marching band. I don't know why, but 5 years after he got out of high school and college, he pointed a pistol into his mouth and pulled the trigger. I emailed his mom last night, and she wrote me this. I've read your message several times, and my heart goes out to the poor kids in this district. I have many regrets in my life, but I am so thankful that I accepted Lloyd for who he is. I hope your meeting goes well, and I pray for your kids. Thank you.
Christina Taylor, followed by Edward Garcia.
Good evening, Superintendent, board members, and staff. My name is Christina Taylor, and I am here today to advocate for the parent notification policy. I understand these topics can be sensitive, and I want to speak from a place of concern and mutual respect. As a parent, I believe it's important to be involved in my child's well-being, not just academically, but socially and emotionally as well. Supporting a parent notification policy is not about judgment. It's about trust, transparency, and ensuring that families are aware of important developments in their child's life. The district itself acknowledges that a custodial parent has a constitutional right to determine, without undue interference from the state, how best to raise, nurture, and educate that child. This foundational right should guide our policies, especially when it involves deeply personal and potentially life-altering decisions like a change in gender identity. We continue to hear about declining student enrollment, and I believe in part this stems from the breakdown in transparency and trust between schools and families. When parents feel excluded or in the dark about what is happening during their child's school day, they often look to other educational opportunities. I've seen this firsthand, as I have family members and friends that have either left California or pulled their kids out of public school, enrolled them in charter schools, private schools, or homeschooled. But a policy like this offers us an opportunity to rebuild that trust and prove to families that the schools are committed to partnership and not secrecy. Thank you for your time.
Edward Garcia.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Superintendent, Mr. President, board members, cabinet, attorneys. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am a parent. First of all, I want to appreciate everybody for all your hard work. Being an elected official, I know is not easy. I know you get criticized for doing wrong, for doing good, for breathing, looking sideways. It's just a harsh reality. We're not going to please everybody. But I want to commend you guys for bringing this policy forward, because what I believe it is a restoration of parental rights. I believe that we've had overreach from the government for many years, and now it's time to do what's right and treat everyone equally and fairly. Not put one person above another because of the race, religion, sex, whatever it may be. But I'm asking you all to consider doing the right thing. I ask that God put that in your heart, what to decide and how to vote tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Right. I think I turned the page too quickly here. I did. All right, consent calendar. Consent calendar items are voted on collectively as a group. Upon board member request, items may be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and individual action. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar items E1 through E6 as presented?
So moved.
I'm allowed to second my own motion just while you're here, since I got to wait for someone over here.
I second.
Be on that mic. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 5-0. All right, F, action items, information items. Approval of the 2025-26 school year Board of Education meeting schedule. Calls for a motion.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. F2, adoption of resolution number 242530, supporting legislation in favor of career and technical education. Calls for a motion.
Mr. Pardue, before the motion is made, I just want to draw attention to this one. We, as a district, do a great job and an improving job around career and technical education. Our trustees each have a hard copy of a booklet, which is a booklet called Career and Technical Education Guide. There's a digital reader version found on our website, and these are available in our school offices. And this outlines the district's stance on career and technical education from the earliest stages of our youngest grades. We've had really terrific elementary career fairs all the way up to kids going on field trips and doing externships all the way through high school. So I just wanted, that's the purpose of this, is to just draw attention and our commitment to it. So thank you for that comment, Mr. Pardue.
All right, thank you. All right, that calls for a motion. Did we get a motion in a second?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. F3, adoption of resolution number 2425-31, supporting legislation in favor of early literacy, professional development, and instructional materials. Calls for a motion.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. F4, approval of personnel report. Calls for a motion.
So moved. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Second reading and, item F5, second reading and approval of a proposed new board policy. I would like to move to strike the language change that was made and to restore the original language to this motion, to this policy.
I second. What are you talking about?
The first reading, we had the original language, and this, what's on the agenda today, has changed language, and we're asking to restore. So the motion was to restore the original language from the first reading, and we have that language available for everyone.
Yeah, so attached on the agenda is the original first reading that was presented last time. There are two places where there was strikeout language that was considered at one time as part of a process went through with one of our labor partners. And so what Mr. Pardue has made the motion is to, in essence, restore or cancel the strikeout that's there and restore that to the original language as was presented in the last meeting.
Why?
Per request of board members, and we'll be able to discuss that, I think, as we go. We can discuss it now.
Point of order.
Just a moment real quick. There was a motion made.
And a second.
And a second.
And now we can have a discussion?
Correct. Point of order. The public wasn't given notice of this change, and speakers came prepared to talk about what was given in terms of notice in the second reading with the revised policy. And so to introduce it now and to try and have a vote on it, I think would be a Brown Act violation.
I disagree. I think the first reading, in fact, the speakers came up and discussed the original language directly. And in our first reading, the public was made aware. We've discussed this openly. I think most people know about it. We're going to have the conversation, and then we can have our discussion about the merits of this. Additionally, this has come up in negotiations with our labor partners, and I think there's a lot to be said on this particular issue on why the language matters So I think it's very.
Point of order. I think that we're diving into territory that was included in closed session, and we shouldn't be doing that here.
There's nothing that was discussed in closed session. We were talking about, in fact, Dr. Andrus just mentioned the fact that this was with our labor partners, that this was negotiated. So I'd like us to open discussion, and so if anyone would like to speak on this issue, I don't think you need to make a point of order to speak since we're in a discussion phase anyway.
Is there a decision on my original point of order that the public wasn't given notice?
Mr. Pro, would you like to comment on that?
Yes. I have reviewed the strikeouts. If I understand what Mr. Pardue, how he described it, there were strikeouts made after first reading, and now those have come back to the board for second reading. And Ms. Munoz is raising the question as to whether the public has sufficient notice as to what the board will be considering at this meeting. And in looking at the changes that were made, I think this situation is different than the last one that we discussed as far as the redlining is concerned. And I don't think that this is substantial enough of a change where if the public was interested, they would be deterred from coming. So I do believe there's sufficient notice for the public. I do believe it's properly before the board, and the board does have the right, if it chooses to amend the current resolution.
I would like to go
That's my recommendation to the board and specifically to the chair, who would now need to rule.
Yes, no, I think I already have mentioned that. So
I think we need to go to closed session because the materiality of the strikeout was a closed session topic that I can't speak freely of in here that I think would have bearing on the decision.
Mrs. Munoz, it's actually public knowledge. Everything that was here is public. In fact, the speakers spoke to it. Dr. Andrus spoke to it. It's public. It's on our agenda, and everyone has read it.
For the changes is not public.
We don't know what the reasons are. We haven't even had a discussion.
You
How do
haven't
you
told
speak to
us. Was a
motivation?
surprise I was surprised by this.
We're having a discussion now, but instead you're challenging whether or not we can strike it, and of course we can. So that's already been discussed. So now let's discuss the merits.
Would you like to give me my opinion? Well, why I wanted the strikeouts taken out? Because the strikeouts have nothing to do with teachers or staff notifying parents. And my concern is by striking this language, it could cause teachers not to bring their concerns to the administrators and then that way the administrators wouldn't notify the parents. So in that way, we could be keeping information from parents. It's still not making the teachers call the parents or staff call the parents. That would still lie on the administrators, and it's the administrator's job. But by having that language, it may cause, or sometimes if you don't have a good administrator, they may say, don't bring anything like this to me, and you could be hiding things from parents again. So that was my reason for wanting to get rid of the strikeouts. And we had the speakers come and say the strikeouts, they were like, why do you even have this? This doesn't do anything for it. So I don't think it's a concern.
Okay, with that being established, I think each voice should be heard in terms of what if you have some prepared statements or things you'd like to talk about the merits of the policy. So anyone would like to make their points made?
Sure, I'll speak to it. I think I agree with the motion to restore that strike through, only because, well, I alluded to at our last meeting, things that, well, let me just back this up a little bit. When I first started this whole journey to the school board, transparency and accountability was the thing that I actually campaigned on. And I believe the public deserves transparency. And the board, the district need to be held accountable to the public. And that being said, it was discovered in the last few weeks, which is under current investigation right now. So for all of those people who are watching who said that Eleanor Briggs is just making stuff up, they discovered at the time when this report was submitted, and I'm going to not include any personnel issues, any names or anything, but our superintendent and his team discovered 43 gender support plans, unbeknownst to 3 layers of our leadership team. So superintendent, 1 layer down, 1 layer down. They had no clue that they were there. So these currently 29 students with a GSP, there are 14 inactive cases, actually. Oh yeah, and then there's 5 now, right, Dr. Andres?
4.
There's 4. So, you know, I'm not struggling, actually. I am, after 2 years of really bringing this and hearing the first time I came into the space, hearing parents and community members come in and say that the district is not being forthright with information, that there's people, and people on this dais sat up here and said, teachers aren't lying to parents, you know, district staff's not lying to parents, everything's perfectly fine. That is the impression I got. So I came in with that, you know, I like my colleague mentioned earlier today, we want to believe the best in people, and that is exactly how I came into this space. And anybody who knows me, I speak highly of the district in terms of the things that the district is doing correctly, and I can applaud every success that it has. But there are opportunities and for growth, and this is that opportunity here. And to me, it validates the parents who have been coming for the last 2 years, the community members who have been coming for the last 2 years, and only now, starting in February, when this was brought to my attention, and I had no idea there was gender support plans. It literally came out of left field for me. And so for us to sit here and pretend, and people came up and spoke and said, you know, the policy that we have in place is so robust right now, there's nothing that needs to be added. Well, apparently there is, because we have a gap in our system. We have a problem, and I'm not saying it because these people are bad. All I simply asked was, what is the procedure, what is the process, and how do we avoid these 43 files? You know, and someone said, well, my God, it's just only 43 files out of 23,000 students. You would not feel that way if that student was yours. If that was your child with their name in that file. There's just no way. So I'm here today, and I will fully support this policy. I fully support it because of this reason. I know definitively that the district does amazing things, but here we have a glaring opportunity for growth. That's my 2 cents.
I have some comments. So just to clarify what Ms. Briggs just shared, because, you know, this is all about transparency. Maybe Ms. Briggs and some of us on this dais were unaware of the gender support plans, but you know, 43 of those parents were aware and they signed them.
No, that's incorrect, Ms. Munoz. I apologize. I should have clarified that. No, 43 of them, this is 43 files they discovered in this program, and of those 43, currently 29 students, there are still 4 as of 2 days ago, and that's only because we have proactively gone out and tried to determine the current status of these 5 files that they were discovered. So let's just say it's 5. Let's just say it's 5. So let's say 5.
That's my point. That's fine. There's only 5 that are not signed by the parents. So while we might, excuse me, I
have a point of order on your facts. Okay, because we do not know the number. So when you say there's only 5, that's not true, and you don't know whether it's true. And most of us don't know whether it's true. So for right now, I know that we are investigating. It's just trying to get to the bottom of what the processes are. That's the number one thing we want to be able to do as a board, okay? But we cannot start feeding into what we perceive to be the facts, but we do know that there were things that we were being misled on some things, not purposefully, but it turns out there are some things that we were not made aware of when we probably should have been.
I think it's really inappropriate if we're trying to be transparent and talk about facts, and this is still being looked into. The information that we received from the administration was that there was 4 or 5 that the parents were unaware of and had not signed. I'm looking at the administrators in this room that provided us with that information. Is that inaccurate?
I'll go ahead and comment just to clarify for everyone and those watching. The statements that have been shared have been, for the very most part, very, very accurate in terms of case files that we were made aware of and discovered during part of the investigation. In that process, some of those students have moved on. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Some of the students still are with us, and parents are very supportive. There is a handful, there are 4, who are being supported that the parents are currently unaware of that status. And we won't go into any more detail than that.
Thank you. In addition to that, I have a prepared statement just about the policy in general. I'm going to read it to you because there's a lot that I want to cover. I heard all of you last time talking about doing your homework, so I did some homework. So the first point is that this policy is unnecessary to achieve the goal of parental control and transparency as to a child's records. Current MV USD policy already provides for this, as does both state and federal law. Part of academic integrity is doing your own homework. We heard that again today. This copy and share from Chino Valley is not a model of good governance and creates legal exposure for the district. In recent days, Temecula Valley Unified School District has been all too made aware of the costs of sloppy policymaking with regard to CRT. While everyone else was focused on CRT, what I found and what caught my attention that directly relates to this policy that is being considered today is a statement in that holding which said, "The void and vagueness doctrine devises from the due process concept of fair warning and bars the government from enforcing a provision that forbids or requires the doing of an act in terms so vague that people of common intelligence must necessarily guess at its meaning and defer as is to its application." From People v. Hall, 2017. To survive a void for vagueness challenge, they proposed a 2-part rule. 1, the regulation must be sufficiently definitive to provide fair notice of the conduct prescribed. And 2, the regulation must provide sufficiently definitive standards for application to prevent arbitrary and discriminatory enforcement. If we apply this same 2-part test to this policy, we would be joining Temecula Valley in the loser's bracket. First, this policy does not sufficiently define a mechanism to provide fair notice of conduct prescribed. In the proposed policy, there is a material term, unofficial record, that is not defined, it is ambiguous, it is vague, and it leads to a lot of unanswered questions. The second part of the test. This proposed policy does not sufficiently provide standards of application. The complexities associated with following FERPA, HIPAA, the Ed Code, and this vague policy are a landmine for employees of the district to navigate when they are not trained or prepared to dissect these complex legal challenges. The same pitfalls that just resulted in Temecula Valley's loss in their lawsuit are present in this policy. My second point. Parental notification policies regarding student records can significantly impact a school's budget, primarily through the potential increased administrative and legal cost. When the state legislature was considering legislation related to parental notification just for gender-related issues in 2013, the financial impact of that proposed legislation was assessed by the Nonpartisan Legislative Analyst Office. And the results of that analysis was the impact to each district, and this was just for notifications related to gender considerations, was several $1 million. And that was not even as far-reaching and as vague as the proposed policy that we're looking at today. Implementing and maintaining parental notifications policies, especially those that require individual notifications as being proposed here, necessitate dedicated staff and resources. The changes from the first reading today and now the boomerang back, I'm sort of glad they did it because striking it ignores the realities of implementation. There's no way to remove teachers from the notification process unless you're going to have a situation where teachers no longer lead extracurricular clubs, programs, or activities, or will no longer take attendance or maintain grade books in a way that they keep track of all things in their classrooms. There's no way to just put this on the backs of the administrators. And it seems that there's recognition of that from my fellow board members, that this will fall squarely on the teachers. In order to get around the perception of discrimination against the LGBTQ+ community, their proposed policy is overly broad and vague, and that it would require thousands of notifications a month from each school site. Changes to student records would require thorough documentation, potentially increasing the need for administrative support and data management. Educating the school staff on the specifics of parental notification laws, internal policies to ensure compliance to state, federal laws, this policy, FERPA, HIPAA, et cetera, are going to be mounting. Schools are going to incur expenses in drafting policies, job aids, trying to work and navigate their way around these complex legal issues that are going to be expensive to defend. Lawsuits challenging parental notification policies or alleging violations of those same policies, student rights, student privacy rights, parents' rights are going to be expensive to defend. The schools might need to seek legal advice to be able to interpret and to navigate these complex legal issues. They're not going to know when Jonathan wants to be named John, whether or not they can do that notification without setting off a landmine with one of the adjacent laws. We're going to have legal costs all over the place and delays. Failure to comply with the Family Educational Rights Privacy Act, FERPA, which governs student records, can lead to a loss of federal funding for the school district. While the Department of Education typically tries to resolve FERPA violations unless there's repeated and egregious violations, because of the vagueness and broad reaching of this policy, the likelihood of repeated and egregious violations is foreseeable. When you have thousands and thousands of notices going out that could potentially bump up against competing rules and regulations, this likelihood is foreseeable. Parents may become concerned about their child's safety and well-being, potentially leading to further decreases in enrollment and impacting funding. There's the reputational damage that could also be felt. Schools need a lot of support, such as counseling. And when you have a group that is already feeling attacked and marginalized further placed in a place of fear, they could seek out additional support to address those emotional and social needs, to help them and their parents struggle through these challenging topics. But where will they turn? Because this board recently voted to eliminate mental health positions to save money and to mitigate deficit spending. We are going to go into next school year with less staff, less teachers, less administrators due to our budget concerns. So how can we justify the expense and administrative tidal wave that this is going to trigger? Parental notification policies have notable financial impacts. They require careful consideration to deal with the administrative burden, the legal challenges, and the importance of complying with federal and state laws. Copying, pasting from Chino Valley is not the answer. I actually applaud Temecula for not taking that position and doing the work. I think we should too.
All right, thank you very much. I want to comment on a number of things you just brought up that I think it's fascinating. First of all, administrative regulations are not board policy. So we pass board policy because we're the school board. We do not establish administrative regulations. It's interesting to hear people discuss how board policy is implemented is up to Dr. Andrus and his team, and then we would approve it. It doesn't take us a lot of time. It really doesn't take them a lot of time. And one of the things that I think really bothers me a lot is this theory that somehow or another we're going to get bombarded with all kinds of lawsuits. We can get bombarded with lawsuits no matter what we do. And when we look at state law and we pretend like the state somehow is an authority on how to manage anything having to do with education just blows me away. There's a group of people up there in Sacramento who pass a law, know nothing about being in a classroom. And let me tell you how I know they don't know anything about being in a classroom. They passed a law that thought it was okay for defiance of authority of a teacher. And shortly after that, I watched one of our staff members get jumped. And the disrespect to teachers in the classroom has gone through the roof. And so the safety of our kids are at stake, because I had a student say, if Coach so-and-so, and I won't name his name, isn't safe, how safe am I as a student as a result of these laws passed? In 2013, the state of California decided to go down this path to have us bickering about it. It's ridiculous. They should have lost their seats. And I'm very hopeful that all of this culminates in some sanity returning to California. It's absolutely insane to think that we're living in this world where we're having to have this debate as to whether or not we discuss this with our parents. Speaking of which, this is very bothersome to me, and it did just come out in a comment I heard moments ago. An 11-year-old boy has a high voice. What is a teacher to do? I don't know, let the little boy be a little boy? That comment alone made my skin crawl. The teacher has no business deciding or telling that 11-year-old boy anything just because his voice hasn't changed yet. At 11 years old, well, of course his voice hasn't changed yet. And this is exactly what parents fear, is that teachers are going to take it upon themselves to determine what this child is. And imagine how that child's going to feel the moment that teacher decides for themselves, by themselves, what the future is for that child, and saying nothing to the parent. I'm a teacher. I have hundreds, if not thousands, of kids because I teach a semester class. Just in the last year or so, I mean, it's a lot of kids, with all kinds of things under everything imaginable, every type of student you can imagine. And the parents will put a name right next to it. And sometimes as a joke, and I can't tell which name to even use. It's very difficult today, right now, without parent notification to figure out what's the official name. That has to be done by a parent. And it's up to our administrators and teachers, and of course the teachers want to be involved. And I think the teachers want to be involved in a positive way, partnering with parents. And I think our district has the capacity, the professionalism, and the common sense to create regulations that can make everyone happy. Because if we don't get this right and we continue this ridiculous bickering, you are going to see a lot of people leave. And we're going to see enrollments drop and decline, and no one's going to want to vote for this bond. Because why would I pay taxes for a public school that seems intent on trying to indoctrinate my children? Additionally, in your comment, you said everyone's about CRT. I've been here for 2 years. I haven't heard one thing mentioned about CRT.
I didn't talk about CRT.
Excuse me, ma'am. I'm speaking. I did not interrupt you.
Well, point of order.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm like to finish my statement because
point of order. You did a point of order.
Excuse
interrupted me. You did a point of order.
I would like to let you know I will let you speak, but we agreed on how we're going to handle things here.
Point of order.
The point of order should be heard.
I will tell you why I'm going to have a problem with this, because this is our meeting, and we agreed on how we would conduct business, and we would allow everyone to speak, and I think you had a good 10, 15 minutes to pontificate. I would like to get my points across.
Point of order.
She has the right to raise the point of order, and then you have the right to rule on the point of order.
I would rule against that point of order, and I will finish my statement.
You need to hear it. Would be my recommendation is that the board president needs to hear a point of order and then rule on it.
In the same way that you did a point of order about 20 minutes ago to correct the record, point of order. I made a millisecond reference to CRT, and I said I wasn't focused on CRT when I read that statement. What I was focused on was the vagueness doctrine. And then I talked for 2 minutes about the vagueness doctrine. I never said anything about CRT. I said everybody else was focused on it, not me.
Madam, I think
that's good.
I'm going to speak to this. We need to follow what we agreed on as a board. And making a point of order to amend what was our policy was entirely different than stopping me from commenting. So we don't make point of orders to stop a board member's comments. I'd never made a point of order to interrupt you as long as you went, and now you're going to interrupt me again. If this is going to be the standard of behavior and you're not going to abide by the guidelines that we establish as a board and how we would conduct our business, then there's going to be some serious problems. Because you need to agree. We're not here to argue. It is my...
Nick, be consistent.
I'm being very consistent, and the one person who's not is you. You continually interrupt. So I'm going to finish my comments. So I am going to rule against your point of order, and I'm going to finish my statement and comment. The last point that I want to make is the custodial rights of parents. I think is very important, as a few people have mentioned more than once, is the 14th Amendment that gives parents the right to raise their children as they see fit. We need to make sure that we support that. We all took an oath to support the Constitution. I think the Constitution is very, very important to what we do here. And so I think all the actions we're taking is to communicate with parents and the community members that we take it very seriously, that they've entrusted us with their children in raising them, and we want to be respectful of their rights, their customs, their beliefs, and we do not want to force our values and what we perceive is proper conduct onto that child, and because we are being entrusted with something that's very precious to those parents. And we need to take that very seriously. And I think this board policy and everything that's being communicated here is to let everyone in the community know that we care about their children and we respect their values and their traditions. And that I think is paramount to this decision.
I would like to add something, but Nancy, I want to give you the opportunity to speak because you haven't yet.
I can go after you.
Oh, are you sure? Okay.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to respond. I'm really kind of getting tired of saying that the threats of getting sued. Like, it's constantly, we are going to get sued, we're going to get sued, we're in the weeds, we're in the weeds. We're not in the weeds. And we need to stop being afraid of getting sued and throwing that word around all the time, because that's a threat tactic to scare us to not do something. So you mentioned, I just wanted to mention something. I don't know if you saw this. The Secretary of Education had written this letter on March 28th, so it's very relevant. By natural right and moral authority, parents are the primary protectors of their children, yet many states and school districts have enacted policies that presume children need protection from their parents. And I've heard that before. Oh, well, if a parent hears this, they're going to beat their children. I heard that at last year's board meeting, and I thought that was a very absurd response, because if a parent is doing that, that's a total different issue, and you call CPS. Often such policies evade or misapply the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, turning the concept of privacy on its head to facilitate ideological indoctrination in a school environment without parental interference or even involvement. Going forward, the Department of Education will insist that schools apply FERPA correctly to uphold, not thwart parents' rights. And I'm just going to read one other little section of this. It's a whole long letter. Congress passed FERPA in 1974 to protect children's privacy in a manner that ensures parents can access their children's school records to gain information and insight necessary to act as proper guardians of their children's well-being. FERPA, as well as the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, PPRA, were intended to shelter families from invasion of their privacy, not to insulate schools from transparency and accountability to parents. And so if you want to be concerned about getting sued and not getting money, we need to be worried that the national government doesn't sue us for something, or we're not in compliance with the national government. That should be more of a concern than what California is doing. And because I don't know if you've noticed in the news, but they are backed up on all their lawsuits from all of these types of things that have been going on. And the reason I keep hearing, oh, we copied and pasted Chino, yes, we did, because they already had something, and why are we going to recreate the wheel when it's already done and it hasn't been challenged? And that is why we picked the Chino, their bill. That is why we picked that. Not because we can't think of something, but why recreate the wheel? And we're going to take something that has stood up to the government.
Okay. Yeah, I have an issue with the copying and pasting from Chino because it appears that this board keeps taking Chino policy after Chino policy and not even looking at our own policies. Almost all of this we already have, at least the parts of it that's legal. Chino has a long history of losing lawsuits, which have drained the district of hundreds of thousands of dollars, money that could be spent on educational programs. It's one reason we need to be concerned about lawsuits. This policy does seem to be designed just to violate Assembly Bill 1955, which is the law. It will create a hostile environment for both students and staff. How are you going to clarify that our employees are not being pressured to break the law? They could get charges filed against them. They could even lose their teaching credentials. Okay, if you're not trying to force our staff to violate state laws, then put the text of AB 1955 in this, and also a statement that people will not be violating state laws. And a lot of people have asked this. I'd like to know too, what's an unofficial record? Like, I'm a French teacher. I always gave my students French names. I guess under these new rules, the poor principal would have to call my 200 parents to tell them that I'm calling Johnny Jean. It's really inappropriate to have something like unofficial record. It defies logic to me. We also all know that students cannot change their own records. Parents do that at the beginning of every year. I had to do that every year for both of my kids. It's time consuming. And I don't think there's a run on students trying to change their records. I haven't even heard of that happening. But yeah, I would like to spend money on academic programs, on our kids, not on culture wars lawsuits. And I don't agree with everything that comes out of Sacramento. I contact our representatives on my own time without involving district funds. We can all do that on our own. But this really just doesn't look good when we're already laying off employees and reducing services. And this, you're also, you are going to deal with a PERB violation and a lawsuit, which will cost tens of thousands of dollars yet again. Okay, and regarding the clubs, I have a problem with that too. You're basically treating high school students like toddlers. They're not toddlers. A lot of them are going to be going off to college, joining the military, going to technical schools, straight into the workforce. The valedictorian at Mesa is going to Harvard. We have a lot of students going into very competitive universities. Should we be tracking these students' every move during lunch to say, hey, your son went into a robotics club meeting today at lunch? It just shows a severe lack of trust towards our teachers and our students. All clubs have to be approved by ASB and administrators. They all have charters. I've sponsored several clubs myself, so I do know a lot about this. Teachers give up their lunch. It's voluntary. Teaching is a really hectic job. You could really use that 20 minutes of downtime, but no. A lot of teachers give up their lunch to offer these opportunities to students. So, okay, and another way that I want to point out, the structure of clubs. Clubs have an open door policy, everybody's welcome into any club. So I always had my clubs. Some of my students would be in the clubs. They would bring in their friends. There would be other people that would come in, and I don't know who most of the people are, and I don't really care. The club sponsor, which in this case was me, I'm in there supervising. And I want to mention this, I think somebody said something about this earlier, but they do Club Rush Day signups, and there are tables set up usually, in the common area, for different clubs, and students go around and talk to them and sign up. A lot of students go around signing up for club after club after club and never go. And then others, they don't go to the Club Rush area, but then they just show up to clubs. That's all fine with me, because we want students to get involved. Students that get involved are way less likely to drop out of school. A lot of students stay in school because of the extra activities. It's just, I don't see how it's logistically possible to track students' whereabouts popping into clubs during lunchtime. A lot of kids will go into multiple club meetings during one lunch period. You're talking about thousands of notifications every single day. So who's going to do this? Like, teachers don't have time for this. And I didn't really appreciate just saying, oh, it's Dr. Andrus's problem to solve. I don't see that this is solvable, and I also don't think it's necessary. How does treating a high school student like a toddler improve their educational experience? For me, it creates an atmosphere of distrust and oppression. What I think will happen if you manage to implement this is teachers just won't sponsor clubs anymore, and students are going to lose these opportunities. And a lot of students will lose their motivation for even being at school. These are all just manufactured crises. We do not have a run on students asking to change records. We do not have parents asking to the schools to report their kids' club attendance. I think most parents are like me. We talk to our kids. I'd ask them how their day was. They'd tell me about the classes they attended, what's going on in their classes, the clubs they go to. I personally did not have a problem with my kids going to any club they wanted to go to. They were all supervised. They were all cleared by ASB. But this implies that parents don't talk to their kids and can't have a normal conversation with them, and I just don't think that's the case with most parents. I think most parents have open communication with their kids. None of this improves the kids' educational experience. It just denigrates it. Anyway, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Because I was so rudely interrupted, I would like to finish a comment here, and especially since it did come up in public comment and then again just now. Administrative regulations, which we mentioned, and we talked about these clubs and what's an unofficial record, it did come up. And it is one of those things that as a group, and I can tell you as the board president, I do get to hear about what's going on with administrative regulations, and so will the board. But those are things that get negotiated out. And I can tell you that we want to be able to work and communicate with our constituents, with our stakeholders and the parents in this community. That's the idea. We do not want to create burdens for anyone, and especially going to clubs. I am also a moderator of 2 clubs, and yes, there's some things that would just be ridiculous. So instead of using a straw man argument and keep going to the nth degree of how ridiculous it could be, it could also be completely common sense, and we could find a way to make this work. And that is what we're supposed to do as adults, as elected officials, as teachers and educators and administrators. We want to do what's best for the community. We want to do what's best for teachers to run an efficient school in this very awkward climate that the state has put us in. The other thing that's very concerning is that when parents, and this is the part that I really hit me, most parents do know. Dr. Andrews has said this a lot. Most parents know what's going on, and yet still, still, and that was a public comment, some of these kids are really, really struggling. It was, the point that was made in public comment was that this child took their life. That to me is very serious, because when a student comes in my class, I want them to feel like this is the best place to be. I want them to feel great about who they are. I want them to feel great about what their future is. And I want to partner with parents to make sure that they are taking steps in the right direction, and that they can have the best relationship possible. And that's not my job. I'm not a counselor. I don't want teachers to be counselors. And I think parents want to know and have faith that the teachers and the staff are good stewards of their children. And that's what we're trying to accomplish, both with whatever administrative regulations our team puts together, with our oversight. And of course, as a board, as we put together policy, we want to do what's right by the community. And I think we're doing that. So that's my last comment. I'd like us to find a way to wrap up discussion, because I know we will all agree to disagree. And we'd like to move on to the vote. But if other board members, I think, Eleanor, you said you had something more to say.
Well, just one more point on that, on the, both of our colleagues here, Nancy and Ms. Young, referenced the financial impact. And based on what Trustee Schmidt has read from the letter from the superintendent, we could potentially lose funding. How much of a financial impact would that be if we're not in compliance with the federal government? So state law, we keep hearing it. And I hear, well, we're going to be lawless if we're not going to if we pass this, we're going to go against the state of California. Well, the state of California in and of itself is going against federal mandates, federal executive orders. So how much more? So what's the greater amount that we're going to lose if we lose federal funding? So let's say we take it to court and it's thousands, Ms. Munoz mentioned thousands of dollars versus millions of dollars that we could potentially lose in federal funding. And I don't know what that number is. In fact, I left a message for our CFO. I don't know what that number is total for federal funding. I mean, you don't need it now, James. I had called, but what does that look like? What is the bigger risk here? Is the bigger risk not complying with the federal mandates and following those, or are we going to literally just kowtow to the state of California and just thousands of dollars in lawsuits? So it's something simply to consider. That I yield.
I'd like to call the question. Let's get a vote.
I have another comment.
Ms. Munoz.
Again, to clarify the record, the information that I provided was from the Nonpartisan Legislative Analyst Office, and their estimate of just gender-specific notifications was several $1 million, not thousands.
It's still less millions than the millions that we'd lose from federal funding. Truth. There's just that you cannot dispute.
Most of our funding comes from the state, not the federal government.
Okay. So we all will agree to disagree. Let's go for a vote. So
just a point of order, Mr. President, just to clarify what the motion is that the board is voting on.
Sure. We are voting to approve the proposed new board policy.
As originally presented.
As originally presented.
On May 8th.
Yes, on May 8th.
So moved.
Well, we moved and seconded already.
You seconded? Okay.
We did. And now it's time for a vote. Ms. Young?
No.
Myself, yes. Mrs. Briggs?
Yes.
Schmidt? Mrs. Munoz?
Abstain.
All right. Motion carries 3-1.
3-1 to 1.
3-1 to 1. All right. F6, student discipline, expulsion case number 2024-2025-146. And that is Mrs. Schmidt.
I move that the Board of Education of the Murrieta Valley Unified School District expel the student for the violation of California Education Code 48900B under Education Code Section 48915B1 for the remainder of the current semester and all of first semester of 2025-2026 school year.
I second. All in favor? We vote.
We need a second. Someone has to say.
I
Oh,
second.
you seconded. Sorry, I apologize.
It's okay. We can do we have to do roll call?
No.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. G, adjourning the Board of Education special meeting. The school financing board workshop will convene following a brief recess to rearrange the room. Members of the public are welcome to attend in person. Please note that the workshop will not be live streamed on YouTube or recorded for later viewing. I call for a motion to adjourn the Board of Education special meeting at 6:43.
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, adjourned.